do a hair flip, looking straight down at the new girl in town, fresh from the heights, and I make it feel nice. Just 'cause of me, I can do anything.
But you know, another thing I had to realize too is what people think about you is not my business.
None.
That's their business.
No.
That's how they feel.
That's how they feel.
I've had some recent scenarios at my office, right? In my workplace. And there was a person that I have an association with. We work together and we get along fine. Just a very playful relationship. I liked her I still like her because a lot of her characteristics reminds me of my mom. So we have that bond. Other people on the outside looking in may think, oh, she's rude, or, I would never talk to a doctor like that or whatever. But we had it was playful, but we knew it was playful.
There was still respect there.
There was still respect there. And then I remember somebody making a statement to me and they said, well, I don't know how you can condone that behavior. And if she did that to me, then I would do X, Y, Z. And I said, okay. I said, so you see how that's the feeling you have about her? That's your business. I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise, but I deserve the same respect to be reciprocated, that you cannot tell me how to feel about her. That is none of your business how I feel about her. I do not need babysitting. If I feel like somebody is not treating me properly or becomes toxic or uncomfortable, I know how to pull up my bootstraps and say, hey, this is not working. Look, I'm a Leo and I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I'm a surgeon. Dude, no one's going to, if anything, I'm probably overreacting more so than underreacting. But the fact of the matter is I did come to that realization, and this is part of the growth process, that what a person feel about you, what they say about you and all that is their business.
Right, because that messes with people's mental health.
Yeah,
you get so worried about perception.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I know a lot of people that keep stuff inside and they take medicine, for their mental health or anxiety because they don't feel like they have a release or an outlet. Because I'll go there again, because of social media, how it attacks people, because that's the platform where everybody get to say how they feel.
That's why I'm afraid of this
if
here.
somebody see this podcast and they say, that shit was trash, don't watch it.
Right.
I know you'll be in your feelings.
I would be in my feelings.
You know I won't.
I know.
But that goes back to...
If it wasn't for them.
Right.
That's exactly what you always say. And only because... And I'm learning, right? But the only reason why I would say that is because I'm honestly, y'all, doing this to help. Yeah. I am honestly doing this to help right now. So one of the transitions or the shifts that I'm trying to make is on my career path. I've always been a person to respect philanthropy and giving back. But once you get on that track, I always say going to medical school is like being in the mafia. Like, once you're in it, it's really hard to get out because it's like you've devoted so much time mentally and physically. And so anyhow, when it was time for me to shift, that's a big deal. It's kind of like, okay, well, what I'm going to do, because all I know how to do is be a doctor as far as career-wise. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so that's a difficult space because you want to help people. And I said, you know what? Instead of just helping the people the 20, 30 people I see in my office every day, we can open that up globally. That's my hope and dream, is that we can create a brand, a vision, a platform where people feel comfortable and they can say, hey, you know what? She's a surgeon. She's a therapist. She's a health coach. Master's degree, working on her PhD, work at CDC, and they're being open and vulnerable about this. So that doesn't mean that I can't accomplish my goals. That doesn't mean even a person who's already established in their careers, like, hey, so it is okay for me to think about maybe doing something different.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I'm necessarily a failure because I don't want to continue or for some people, or that I'm not going through a midlife crisis. You know, some people say, oh, they're just going through a midlife crisis. That's why it has nothing to do with that. Like I have a seed that was planted in me, and I've told you and I've told you, there is something big that I am supposed to do. And I can feel it, but I can't see it. Right.
Right.
And so we talked about starting where you are.
I tell you, start exactly where you are.
Yes. And so when we talked about this podcast, we talked about some working on doing some digital courses. We talked about maybe doing some talks. You know, and actually I told you I recently met somebody. Hopefully she'll come on the podcast. But then as I'm stepping out, then I'm seeing things unfold going towards that. You see? And so that's why I'm embracing the shift. And that's why I want, if anybody has an inkling of anything in their spirit, their gut, their soul, then that's the direction that you definitely need to look into and pursue. And it's okay.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Even if it doesn't go anywhere, but if you, I think you need to at least
You miss shots you don't take.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
One of the things that I want to kind of connect the dots a little bit with what each of you just said is, number one, the fear of change and the discomfort that comes with that. And you said something before, Tina said, about reviews and possibly nasty comments. But right before that, you said, it's none of my business what people think of me. But no. I'm not saying that to say, but you just said that. No. But the reason why I love that in that moment, you said, yeah, that's true, is because, man, that's easier said than done.
It is.
Right.
It took me forever to go ahead. I just said this to Tina and Lasagna a little earlier. You know, do you prefer me to call you Dr. Lopez or Lasagna? Okay. So I just always call you Lasagna. But one of the things that I recently did was put my business on Google, register my business on Google, because I was scared to get any type of reviews, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, my little heart can't take somebody saying I'm awful because I think I'm good at what I do, right? Until I started getting all these clients asking me, where can they find me so they can write a review? And then I said, you know what? If I want to continue growing and reaching people, I need to be okay with putting myself out there. And while the great late Maya Angelou said, what people say is about you is none of your business, we're still human, and that's part of the human experience. We don't like to hear, and there are some people that can take it with a grain of salt, like Tina, right? And there are some people that are a little more sensitive to that. I know I'm sensitive, right? So
I think for me, I'm learning, when I mentioned the first time that what people think about you is their business, I think I'm speaking from more of a personal side. But then when you talk about the reviews or how people think about you, I'm looking at my professional side, because we are in service, and because I get, at the end of the day, sometimes I tell myself, I said, when there's a patient that complains, I literally say, I don't have anything else to get, because I give 1,000% to everybody.
Right.
I really do. I listen, I talk, I go all in when it comes to diagnosing and treating. I cry, I hand out napkins, I hug, I pray. So it's like, if you have a person that you've given so much to, and you've extended yourself to, and if one little thing, like, oh, somebody didn't call them back in an hour. You know what I mean?
Now you're the worst doctor in the world.
Now you're the worst. She doesn't have bedside manner. She doesn't this. So I think that bothers me on the professional side. And that also kind of catapulted me wanting to shift. It really...
I get that.
Yeah.
Because, I stay unbothered about most things. But it takes, in coaching, we call it the why beneath the why. And so I had to question myself, because going to school to get my doctor's degree has been really, really difficult. And it's like, why? I'm doing this, why? Like, is it to be called doctor? Dr. Lopez.
Don't call me doctor.
That's why I always call her Dr. Lopez, because it's like, is it because I want to be called Dr. Lopez, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Latina Johnson? That would be superficial. And so I had to dig deeper, because it's hard. And I'm like, okay, so guess what? I'm over that. I don't need to be called doctor. What's the real reason? Because I can stop this because it's expensive, right? And I realized that it had to do with my profession, which had to do with my trauma, because I didn't have friends. You know, that whole, in our culture, the whole light skin versus brown skin girls, you know, I always felt like I had to prove that I deserved that position after having
Because you're lighter
rumors.
skin?
Well, after having rumors that, you know, she only got this because she's light skinned. She only got this because so I felt like I had to be the most educated chick at the
That
table.
is so interesting. This has to be
Yeah.
another segment because on
Yeah.
the flip side, being darker skin, it's kind of like, well, I'm not getting it because I'm darker skin.
Well,
That's
there's no
crazy.
win-win because
There's no win-win.
because you can feel passed over, which most of the time the reality is you will, right? Which could cause some trauma, right? And for me, I'll probably get it before you get it because of how society is, right? But once I get it, it's so hard because everybody think I only got it because of my looks. You get what I'm saying? And it's hard when you have to sit in your office and cry because people talk about how you got your position. You get what I'm saying? And you know you worked so hard for it. Like, you know, I push.
Right.
I push when I'm sick.
Right.
I push, like, I was pushing when I was suicidal. People didn't know it except for my inner circle.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And so
Right.
I realized that's why I was getting my PhD because
prove.
that's one thing nobody can take away from me is my education. So when you sit and have a conversation with me at the table, I'm speaking with intelligence and you can't take my intelligence away from me. So you may have thought before you heard me open my mouth that I got there from sleeping around and go, you know what I'm saying?
Listen, let me tell you, even if you take colorism out of it, just being brown.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to my residency, right? During my residency, I can specifically, I can't remember the condition that the patient had, but I can remember I was at one of the private hospitals and I was doc in the box on call and there was a patient that was extremely sick. I'm talking, and you know, orders and action had to occur quickly. And when I was given some orders to nurses, well, that's not how Dr. Such and Such. I literally, kid you not, had to get a textbook and turn, okay, well, on page 254, when a patient does have these symptoms, this is what we're supposed to do. And because there were some life-saving things that came out of my mouth and with my hands, that's then when I earned their respect.
Those blessed hands.
You see what I'm saying? That's crazy. And then some of my colleagues, you know, I'm totally not trying to be disrespectful, but that I know didn't have the same skill set, they respected them just because
They were praised.
Right, just because they were men, just because they were, you know, Caucasian men. It was an assumption that they knew what they were talking about when they did it.
So this question always comes up. So how do we prepare our young girls, right?
Right.
How do we tell them, hey, you're going to have to work harder. You're going to have to push because you're a female and you're a female of color, right? Without creating this anxiety about who they are and creating this blockage of I'm not going to go for it because I don't feel like proving myself. I'm going to give you a good example. I grew up with a single mom and she, you know, I don't know how she made it, how she raised two girls and put me through Catholic school because my zone school was really, really bad. To this day, I appreciate because she invested in our education. All those times that she would have me watch World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, I used to get so upset because I thought it was a bit extreme, right? And reading the newspaper, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, all that stuff, I couldn't see it then, but I see it now because she always used to drill into me, you're going to have to work twice as hard because of where you're from. You're a female, you're a Latin woman, just all these things, right? She would drill in me. And while I knew the reason why she was doing it, she was also drilling this insecurity intimate.
Life is hard.
Life is hard. No, seriously.
That's why I said everybody has childhood trauma.
That's interesting.
It is because it's I understand why she did it because
Right.
she was trying to provide me with, again, I'm very sensitive.
But
since I
did
was
you
a little
understand
girl.
it then?
I
Only
didn't
after
understand
you
it
became
then.
an adult,
I
right?
did not understand it then, right? All I knew is, oh my gosh, now I'm sitting at the table as the only Latin person that's not cleaning up the place with a bunch of middle-aged, this is when I was in sales, right? I was young, I was the only Latin person with a bunch of middle-aged Caucasians around me, right? And I was making sure that I spoke eloquently, I looked a certain way. I wouldn't even allow my hair to be at its natural curly state. I would straighten it, right? Not even realize why I'm doing these things.
fit
But
in.
again, right. And regardless, I was never going to be them.
Right.
Right.
So I had to get to a place where I was comfortable being who I am around people and letting them appreciate my authenticity and who I am. So fast forward, I have a girl, right? She's 15 and I have a 7-year-old boy. But with my girl, I never tell her anything about you have to work twice as hard. No, I push her, but I never tell her the reason is because you're going to have to work twice as hard. You're going to have to prove yourself because you know what? She'll learn that on her own.
That's something.
Life
I'm not
is
gonna lie.
gonna
That's
teach
something.
her.
That's something that I do, and I'm,
Right.
and so you ask, how do you teach your young girls to do or not to do that?
Right.
Therapist. That's
Right,
why.
right.
Well, that's why, and
Right.
it's crazy because I do it because I think I'm protecting them, and I'm trying to give them the tools so they can be ahead of it, right?
Right.
But then on the flip side, I realize that could be cultivating perfectionism.
Yes.
And, both of my girls in their own way, they struggle with that, especially my oldest daughter. She puts so much emphasis on being perfect. And I see that, but I didn't make the connection between what we're talking now. But whenever we have like the parent conference, the student parent conference with the teachers, that is the only thing they say, what is your concern? That is the only thing. When we have the conferences about her, honestly, there's nothing for them to say other than she's fabulous.
Right.
We wish we could clone her.
Right.
I mean, A's and everything, very eloquent, very dedicated. And so the only thing I say, guys, please, can you emphasize what we're emphasizing at home about perfectionism? But then I guess that makes sense, right? If I'm saying you have to work twice as hard, that is,
we don't realize, we don't
Right,
connect
I
the
didn't
dots
realize
until
that.
we're older. But it was, to me, what's important is as she goes through these phases of life, like right now we're in the teenage years, and it's hard for me because what I realized being the mother of a teenager, I wasn't really allowed to be a teenager, right? My mom was super strict and I had to, because of my environment, I had to grow up rather quickly, right? And so now I'm looking at this young lady who is being a teenager. And while there's one part of me that is so happy that she is living this life where she is able to enjoy every stage.
Right.
She has no worries. Her biggest worries is not getting hair dye on the floor because she wants to dye her hair a certain color, or you know what I mean? Her room has clothes everywhere. Like she has her own room, like all these things. And it was a struggle for me because I used to take it as, you don't appreciate what you have, when she was really being a teenager. But I was projecting my own
preaching to me.
stuff. No, but I was
'Cause I say it
projecting,
constantly.
right.
Wow.
I was projecting my own experiences
Right.
with how she's behaving like a typical normal teenager. And I had to make a shift,
Right.
and be proud of how she's behaving, because that means that I'm creating a happy,
Right.
safe, harmonious environment for her to be. Sometimes she tells me things and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I
Can't believe she's telling you. Yeah, I can't
And this one day I said,
I got
"Can
one
you
of those."
Please not. I'm not your friend. I'm your mom." And
But
it's
you want that
funny.
communication, right?
Right. But I appreciate it. And she'll be like, "Oh, Mom, can't we be friends too?" I said, "I'll talk to you later," because sometimes she's just too much, But then I have to make that shift. But going back to even preparing our young girls, right? It's, to me, the focus has become more of, you know what? I'm going to identify your strengths.
Yeah.
I'm going to embrace your talents and your uniqueness, because by me doing that and cultivating that, right, what's going to happen is that's going to build your confidence.
Right.
Yeah,
Right?
and they're gonna learn some things on the journey. I didn't have quite the same experience with my two girls.
Right.
It was a little different. I think I was so aware of my trauma. I never wanted them to experience those things. So I was always very open, very honest, very frank. It is what it is. Anything they wanted to explore and try, I let them explore and try in regards to schools and hair and even their professions. Like I told them they could do anything they wanted to do, and I'll back them on that. However, through life, my oldest daughter, because she was always doing something, like president of student council, Miss 12th grade queen, like that stuff that she wanted to do, and no pressure. If you want to do it, fine, I got you. If you don't, it's all good over here. But she Dr. Lopez and I talked about it. Lasagna. We talked about it because she has this thing now. She's very successful in her career, but she has this perfection thing. And I said,
That's perfectionism is so
I said,
dangerous.
did I do that? Yeah, because it caused anxiety and it caused
so dangerous.
It can be dangerous. And I said, who did that to you? Did I do that to you? I tried very hard not to.
Is that something that people can just intrinsically have? I mean, I'm asking you from a therapist.
Well,
I know the answer, but I want you to.
I always say that, yes, I do to a certain extent, right?
Right.
Agree that it's intrinsic. However, it's just not the parents, right? It's society. Think about it. We have to look a certain way.
Yeah.
The expectation from our teachers, you need to hand all this in and you need to do A, B, and C so that you can grade. So there's pressure, and pressure can create perfectionism. And I always say you have this umbrella. The umbrella is anxiety. Under anxiety, there's different types of symptoms and different types of anxiety. You have separation, you have generalized, you have agoraphobia, you have perfectionism, you have OCD, you have different symptoms and subcategories. That's the word I was looking for. Right. And so even with, and I always go back to the social media just because that's so prevalent right now, even when you see with the filters and looking, there's the pressure to look a certain way.
Perfect,
It's a pressure to getting in a certain school. It's the pressures from families. So even though we may be raising them to be accepting, it's the pressures all around them.
So I have a question for you. So, and actually both of my girls are like this. And so my oldest, Jayla, as you know, she acts, right? She's in musical theater. She has a natural talent. Like, of course, she's learning technique, but it's just natural. I mean, her father is artistic, right? That's what he does. Singer, songwriter, producer, so she gets that naturally. So whenever she's in an environment to express her creativity, whether it's her teaching herself how to play an instrument or her actually acting, she stands out, right? So, and because she stands out, she's getting accolades for that. And to me, that continues to perpetuate the perfectionism. So what I'm seeing from her more and more is, and we need to talk about this when we come in for a session. Say she'll get a particular grade. She'll get 95, 98, right? And she'll say, Mommy, I got this on my science test. And I'll say, oh, baby, that's really good. That's not enough for her. And then I'll keep doing whatever I'm doing. Well, that's it. Like, you're not gonna, and it's kind of like what she wants more
praise.
Yeah, she wants more praise. And it's kind of like, how do I balance making sure that she understands what she did was great versus me just throwing the other, but I'm trying not to highlight it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, the word great. Because my daughter is grown, very great at what she does.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm like, I don't recall doing that. If I did, I apologize. I never asked you to be perfect. I told her there's no such thing as perfect. I just wanted you to be great, whatever that means to you. Great. Just be great. And it's hard when you have two. You have two. I have two.
Right.
Because Morgan was so great when my second child went to listen. She the one. She don't mind being in her sister's shadow. She like, yep. I'm her sister. Y'all know who I am. Like she's very, because she's proud of her sister.
Right.
She's like, yep, I'm her sister. But at the same time, I'm like, listen, when you go to school, your sister just graduated. So when you walk up in that high school as a freshman, they're gonna expect, they know who you are already. They're gonna expect you to do the same thing she did. Do you. You don't walk in nobody else's footsteps. You create your own. So I always try to do that, but I think life and them, as they grow and they're in different, arenas and areas.
Right.
And with social media, it puts pressure on them that sometimes as the parents, we don't put on them. It's just life itself. Life, it can be very hard and challenging. And then that's when your childhood traumas come up. And it makes it seem like a toxic situation. So
I think we just prove why we need to be able to talk to someone.
Absolutely.
Because it's unavoidable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not perfect parents. That's, like I said, one of the reasons why I wanted to come and talk to you, not just an outlet for her, so she could have a safe space and not feel like she was being judged, but just so I can maneuver and learn how to do, regardless of what, we're going to make mistakes in life, period. Whether it's mistakes about yourself, with your,
no
with
such
your
word as
spouse, with
perfection.
right, there's nothing, but as far as when we come across these challenges, you do need to have somebody on the outside looking in like, hey, this is another perspective.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, these are some of the tools you can use. And you say, oh, this is how we gonna
apply those tools.
Yeah, this is how we're gonna
absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I just say something really quickly, because it's so interesting to me? We're talking about how we don't want our children to fall into that hole of perfectionism and things like that. The minute our children struggle with anything, even perfectionism, who do we blame? We blame ourselves.
We do.
Because we think that we should have been better, right? There's some perfectionism in that. If you think about
That's
it,
why I
right?
said, did I do that
Yes.
to you? Like, did you get that
Right.
from me?
So it's kind of like, oh my gosh, you're this way because I did that. I messed up. I wasn't the perfect parent. I had all these books, all these tools. I didn't apply them properly. I thought I was supposed to do it this way. So it's on such a subconscious, deep rooted level, right? Like, for example, yes, I'm a therapist. I help those with adolescents. I have an adolescent, right? It is part of the adolescent phase that they're going to make mistakes. They're supposed to make mistakes, regardless, whatever profession you're in. That is what they do. And then we teach them, they learn from them, they grow, right? That is part of that experience. But what happens? We blame ourselves. What did we do? Instead of saying, okay, this is not abnormal. This is something that happens. Let's step back and think about our own adolescence, right? So we talk about perfectionism and being careful not to project that or to teach our children that. But then if you think about how hard we are on ourselves when our children are struggling because we think we did something, that's like another layer of perfectionism.
We tend to not give ourselves grace.
Right.
Okay, so Josephina, we've talked about mental health as it relates to social media and childhood trauma and on our jobs. And to tie everything in, what are the takeaways? What would you like for people to take away from listening to this segment of the podcast? Because you're the expert in this.
No pressure. My goodness. Really the takeaway is to be accepting, right? There is strength in saying, I need help. right? There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? I'm struggling with this. I need help with managing. I always say managing our emotions. If you really think about it, that's kind of what therapy is about, right? Our emotions stem from several different things, right? We tapped on childhood trauma, but that in itself is a whole segment. And it doesn't even have to be childhood, just trauma in general. And how it rewires our brain and how it creates all these trauma responses, including ADHD. People don't realize that in ADD in adults, right? And the different modalities that can be used to help with that. So the takeaways, going back to your original question, is be open, be compassionate, embrace. Be compassionate to those that do need it and not be judgmental, right? Understand that depression looks different in different people, right? Know the difference or try to understand there's depressive symptoms and then there's a disorder, right? But you don't have to figure that out. Let a professional help you figure that out. It's okay to say, you know what? I need a space where I can grow. I can have a space, a safe space to say whatever it is that I'm feeling and for someone to help me navigate through these feelings and give me skills so that I'm not maybe self-sabotaging, which that's a whole other thing too.
Right.
So just being open, being accepting, right? Encouraging others that you feel may need it. You're not alone. We were not meant to walk this earth by ourselves. We don't have to be strong all the time. Whatever your definition, whatever your definition of strong is, we need to lean on to people. That is part of the human experience. It's not for us just to figure everything out, right? It's for us to lean on people that we trust and create. And if you don't have it within your own family, you create it for yourself.
And that's part of the shifts, right?
Absolutely.
Because we're learning, we're growing, we're understanding. Because my whole thing, guys, about the shift, I want to shift out of the thought process of survival into prosperity. So we were taught to get an education, to get a degree, to establish a career, to pay your bills, to have good credit. That's it. Right? And so through this whole process of ShyftU, I'm going to be focusing on legacy building, entrepreneurship, embracing some of the things that we're talking about. That's where the ShyftU evolved.
Embracing change.
It went from exercise to legacy building, but it's all applicable. We've used shift like how many times during this segment? Because it's all encompassing. Just one thing before we end. Can you explain to people that's viewing the difference between a psychiatrist and a therapist?
Oh, absolutely. So a psychiatrist is actually a medical doctor that their specialty is psychiatry or psychological mental health. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of that for some reason. Mental health. So they're the ones that will prescribe you the antidepressants or whatever we call them, psychotropic medication that have to do with the mental health disorder. Okay. You can call it mental health disorder, mental illness, whatever you feel comfortable labeling it as. But that is what a psychiatrist is. So they do not provide therapy. They usually meet with you. I mean, I've met some that will meet with you for half an hour. I have some that will just go over your symptoms, ask you how the medication is helping you, make changes, and that's it. But they always encourage that you see a therapist because the medication will assist you with making you a little more stabilized so that you can be open to what you're learning in therapy. You can be in a more stabilized,
because they're addressing the physical manifestation of what's going on mentally. Like you mentioned, the serotonin, the physiology, dopamine.
Exactly.
So they're trying to give you chemicals or medicines to block certain receptors or to stimulate certain receptors so that your physical manifestations like, so for anxiety, people get high heart rates,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They may get shortness of breath. I mean, some people
Absolutely.
may even get numbness, like you thinking you
Right.
having a stroke.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah, and I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah.
Somebody that's dealt with it for a long time, I knew the difference. And so sometimes, people be like, oh, well, do you see a psychiatrist? And I'm like, they don't even know what that's for. Like, do I see a therapist? Because, I get meds. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times the outlet is just from having a conversation. Well, I wish there were therapists around like you.
she is so awesome. Like my daughters are like, just to have. I mean, you're so just open and you made me feel so comfortable,
Thank you.
guys. I've cried at her office. I mean. Things that you said to me, like you have so much to offer, because our situation. We'll get into that too, where we're talking about career changes and things that COVID brought out. As far as me, a click, there was a click. Like, dang,
You probably got a lot of patients during COVID.
yeah, because it was like, dang, it's like I'm doing this. Like, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? Am I really getting fulfilled in that vulnerability piece and me questioning and feeling like I may be abandoning patients, or I may not be appreciative of the gift that God gave me? Because I do feel like my hands are anointed. Like,
They are.
I do feel like that.
Yeah, they are.
And just saying, well, dang, like, am I not being appreciative of that gift, wanting to change? And I had to come to the realization with speaking with you that was just a phase, and it's okay to go to the next phase.
Listen, let me tell you, one of the hardest things there is when you have mental health issues is finding the right therapist. So I remember as a teenager me saying, no, I'm not going to nobody else. I'm a very transparent person. I could talk to my grandma all day about all my issues. So what am I talking to you for and you getting a check for it? I just didn't feel the connection. But like I said,
That's
at
the
15,
key.
if I had somebody like you,
Oh, thank you.
I probably wouldn't have went through all the other traumas and dramas in my life.
The
You know what I'm
girls,
saying?
they really do.
Yeah,
They love you.
so I really do appreciate you, the service that you give, the heartfelt service that you give. You can tell that you're somebody.
You the same.
Well, I can tell you're somebody that don't do it for a check. I know that you're really listening, you're paying attention,
right,
and you're really trying to help set up that jump shot. You get what I'm saying? So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Give the audience your information if they want to contact you, if they have some needs.
So you can actually go to my website, olandcounseling.com. That's OLAND. Counseling.com, and there you will get my contact information. I don't know my business number by heart. That is so terrible, but you can definitely find all my information there. So yeah, I'm located in Roswell, Georgia.
But you do virtual.
But I do virtual. I have people that come from Hampton, Georgia, that will come out and want to see me, or they want to see me virtual. But yes, so if you want to contact me, you can definitely reach out to me there. Thank
I can tell you what, you will be on this podcast many times.
Because we need help. No.
We do. No, honestly, we do.
Yeah,
I mean, because if you think about every facet of what we want to touch, it's that component.
Yeah.
That mental piece. That's what we talk about, mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.
In order to even emulate balance, you have to keep those three components. So that's not just like, it's a separate piece, mental health month, mental health segment. Even if we had another guest on here, that your perspective, may help even in that exchange, because they're all interconnected.
They are. Although I'm a life coach, I like to say I'm a mindset strategist, because it really starts with changing this. If you can change this, you change this. And if you change how you're feeling, you change your behaviors.
Absolutely.
So I'm big on that. Okay. Well, we have an email address as well.
We do.
Hit it, Lasagna.
It is ShyftU.com. Very simple. So ShyftU@gmail.com. I don't know did I look in the camera? ShyftU@gmail.com. This is our first podcast, so this is new to me. I'm sorry. I don't know which camera to look in.
It's okay. I don't even think I've been looking at camera.
I know. I've been looking at you, ladies.
Yeah, because it's just really a conversation. These are conversations that we typically have over wine or, I choose tea. But we want to thank everybody for tuning in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was great to have you and to talk about this. I know we talk again, like we've all said, mental health is a part of almost everything we do. So we talked about many topics, but still regarding mental health. So we encourage everybody to continue to check us out. Thank you for watching the ShyftU podcast, and we will see you next time.
Next time, real soon.
Fresh from the heights and I make it feel nice. Feeling so fly, I don't even know why.